folks, today you are going to learn from my real-life experience of what will truly happen to you after you have been forced to shoot a violent attacker in self-defense. But first, for new viewers, welcome to my channel. It's all about prepping and self-defense. And I was in law enforcement for over 20 years, and unfortunately I was forced into a self-defense police action shooting, so the information that I give to you in today's video is from real life experience. And then if you like this kind of information the mainstream media typically doesn't give you, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and also like the video. Now, the first thing to know is that you will probably experience what's called auditory exclusion while your actual self-defense shooting is occurring. And auditory exclusion is where you probably will not even hear your gun firing as you are shooting it towards your violent attacker. And this is completely normal as your body is redirecting energy from some organs to other organs while you are in fight or flight. And then immediately after your shooting, you will probably experience lapses of memory, which means you will probably not remember certain things about your self-defense shooting even immediately after the shooting. For example, in my incident, I do not remember, to this day, I do not remember yelling voice commands at that suspect before I fired my weapon. But evidently I did, because witness statements said that I did do that before I fired. And number 3, during your self-defense shooting, you will probably experience the feeling of sudden doom, dread, and impending death. And I have to say this, that feeling of impending doom or dread that you feel when something bad is about to happen in your life is absolutely nothing compared to the doom and the impending death that you feel when a bad guy is trying to murder you. For example, the doom and the impending death that I felt during my incident, it was so intense, I actually don't even know how to articulate what I felt during it at that time. I just don't even know how to say it to really convey how heavy that feeling is. I don't even know how to properly say it to convey just how extreme that feeling is. And number 4, immediately after your self-defense shooting, you will probably be flooded with emotions. And this is perfectly normal. Hey, somebody just tried to kill you, and the way that you survived that encounter was by offering extreme violence back to that attempted killer of yours. And one of those emotions that you may feel may be anger because the actions of that violent attacker caused you to do something that you did not want to do. So just realize that if you feel extreme anger after your self-defense shooting, anger towards that violent attacker that tried to kill you, just realize that that is completely normal, and it even happened to me. And number 5, as soon as the police arrive to your self-defense shooting scene, they are going to seize your handgun as evidence, and they will also take you into custody until they find out exactly what occurred. And this will mean that you will likely be handcuffed, because when the cops first arrive, they do not know what happened yet. They don't know if you're the good guy or if you're the bad guy, or if that dead person that's laying over there, if he is an innocent victim or if he is a suspect. The only thing the cops know when they first arrive is that they have a person shot and that you are likely the person that shot them. So they just got to get everything figured out. Now, it's very important to know that at this time, right after your shooting and the cops first arrive and they've got you handcuffed, that at that point in time, you typically are not considered formally under arrest. You're typically considered legally detained at that point. You're not free to leave, but you are not under arrest. Now, what happens there is you are detained as the cops figure everything out, and they want to ensure that you are the good guy. And then as long as the evidence and witness statements and everything else starts pointing towards the fact that you legally and justifiably defended yourself, you will more than likely be released. However, if the evidence and witness statements and everything like that point towards the fact that it was a unjustified shooting, that's when it would change from actually being detained to formally arrested and charged. Number 7, as you are sitting there handcuffed while the police are working the crime scene and they're figuring out what happened, while you are sitting there during that time, your heart rate and your blood pressure is probably going to skyrocket at that time, and that too is also perfectly normal. The first thing to remember is that you had just survived an encounter where somebody tried to murder you and you survived it. So you're going to have this huge adrenaline dump that's happening at that time. The other thing that's going to be probably going through your mind is you're going to be wondering if your elected prosecutor in that county where you live at, if he is going to consider that as a justified shooting. You're going to be, wondering, am I going to be going to prison for the rest of my life? You're also going to be wondering if the dead bad guy's family is going to hire a civil attorney that's going to be suing you for thousands or millions of dollars. Just all these things are going through your mind while you're having this huge adrenaline dump. So therefore, your blood pressure, your heart rate, all that stuff is going to be going through the roof. And that's why I always suggest to people that right after a self-defense shooting, when the cops arrive, that is part of that simple statement that they give to the cops is where they request to go to the hospital, because if you're not in super good shape, you may only be a few minutes away from a heart attack or something like that due to your stress levels, again, right after the shooting. And the other thing to remember too, with that huge adrenaline dump that you're having at that time, you could also have injuries that you don't even realize that you have. So again, that's just another reason why I believe it is a good idea to be taken to the hospital after a self-defense shooting to just get checked out and to get your heart rate and your blood pressure and stuff like that back lowered again. In my incident, it was hours and hours before my heart rate finally came back down. I think it was 7 or 8 hours later before I really kind of returned back to normal. And really fast, if you are watching this video on YouTube, you should come over to Rumble to watch your favorite videos. Rumble does not censor us like YouTube does. So if you want to support the freedom of speech, just go over to Rumble and search ethical preparedness in the search bar. Now let's get back to the video. Okay, number 8. Once the cops have the scene under control and they know nobody else is going to be getting shot or anything like that, the cops are going to ask you what happened. They're going to want to learn exactly what occurred, and this is perfectly natural. They even did it to me, another fellow police officer. But as I always suggest, you're at that moment in time, you are not in a state of mind to give a proper, detailed statement of what occurred. You're not in the proper state of mind where you won't use words that may be misconstrued later and used against you. So that's where I always suggest of giving that simple statement of the bad guy did X that puts you in fear for your life. So just an example, if a bad guy pulled a knife on you and demanded your money, your simple statement would be similar to, he pulled a knife on me. I was afraid for my life, so I defended myself. Now, I don't want to answer any more questions until I speak to my attorney, and I don't feel good and I wish to be taken to the hospital. Number 9, the police are going to want to take you back to their headquarters to get a more detailed statement from you. It's always a lot easier to get a detailed statement from you at their headquarters because you don't have rain, you don't have wind blowing, you don't have a bunch of people standing around. It's a more controlled environment. It can be video and audio recorded easier. But this is where point number 8 comes in, and that is if you have asked to be taken to the hospital, instead of taking you to the police headquarters, they will instead call an ambulance that will come and take you to the hospital. Now, once you arrive to the hospital, they will probably have a police officer standing outside of your hospital room as you're being medically checked out. And again, at this point, you would still be considered as detained while the cops are still processing that crime scene and not actually under arrest. And actually, you may not even be considered detained at this point, because if you are detained by the police and the police have brought you there, then the hospital will send the hospital bills to the police department instead of your insurance company. Number 10, if you have self-defense insurance or you belong to a legal self-defense association, then your attorney is probably getting dispatched to your location at this time. And this is an absolute butt saver for you. Your attorney coming to your location that soon after your self-defense shooting, but your attorney being dispatched to your location to deal with the police on your behalf is probably the highest likelihood that's going to keep your butt out of jail that night. And this is one of the reasons why I always shamelessly promote firearms legal protection. This is why I belong to them and use them myself, because I believe that FLP has everything that's important that self-defenders need. If I am forced into another self-defense shooting within a very short amount of time, my attorney will get dispatched to my location. And again, that will be a butt saver for you down the road for court. And I will put a link to Firearms Legal Protection down below. You can check them out if you want to. But even if you don't go with FLP, I really suggest that you go with some kind of company that's going to protect you like that. Number 11, your shooting incident scene is going to be considered a crime scene. No matter how justified your self-defense shooting was, no matter how legal your self-defense shooting was, that shooting incident scene is going to be considered a crime scene. And that is because when that criminal committed that act against you that puts you in fear for your life, that criminal committed a crime against you. So while you're at the hospital or wherever you're at during that time, the police are going to continue to process that crime scene. They're going to collect the spent shell casings. They're going to collect nearby video surveillance. They're going to get statements from witnesses, etc. Number 12, once the police have finished processing the crime scene and interviewing different witnesses and getting witness statements and stuff like that, once the police have finished processing that crime scene, if all the evidence points towards that being a justified and legal self-defense shooting that you did, then more than likely you will be released at that point to go home. However, if the evidence at the scene and witness statements and stuff like that points towards it not being a justified and legal self-defense shooting, then at that point you will probably be moved from being considered detained to formally arrested and charged, and then you will be booked into jail where you will later see a judge who will read the charges that are put against you, and then bond may or may not be set for you. In my incident, we were actually taken back to the police department where we were not allowed to leave as the other police agencies processed that scene. And then later on, hours later, after all evidence pointed towards our police action shooting as being justified, then we were finally released where we could leave the police department to go home to be with our wives. Number 13, if you are formally arrested, then likely a bond will be set for you. However, this will be a very high bond because you will probably have some type of a murder charge there. This bond will be so high that chances are, unless you're a millionaire or you got a millionaire family member or something like that, chances are you or your family is not going to be able to afford that bond to get you out of jail before your court trial date. And this is just another reason why I always suggest that people belong to a self-defense legal association, because many of these will pay your bond if one is set to get you out of jail, so that way you're not spending months and months in jail while you await your court trial date. And again, I will put a link to Firearms Legal Protection down below. If you don't join FLP, join some kind of company like that. Number 15, no matter how justified your self-defense shooting was, you will probably still feel horrible about it in the days, weeks, and months after the shooting occurred. And this is perfectly normal to feel horrible about that incident, because most of us do not want to shoot somebody. Most of us do not want to cause that kind of trauma to somebody else unless we're absolutely forced to save our lives. The other thing that you have to remember too is that when you shoot somebody, you are going to see the trauma that you caused on their body. You're going to see the bullet holes. You will see the blood coming out. You're going to hear their cries of pain, and you're going to realize that even though he forced you to do that to save your life, you're going to realize that it was your actions that caused that trauma to that person. So again, it is perfectly normal for a person like you and I to feel horrible about having to do that. Number 16, at some point, the cops will probably want a detailed statement from you about what occurred with the shooting. And this is perfectly normal because a detailed statement from you is going to help that evidence to make sense. Now, the very important part of this detailed statement that you may or may not give to the police is that if you give this to the police at a later date, it needs to be with your attorney. Your attorney needs to help you draft that statement, to prepare that statement, and he should be with you by your side when you actually give that statement to the police. Your attorney is going to make sure that you word that statement correctly and that you don't use any words again that can be misconstrued and used against you. Now, here is where giving a detailed statement with your attorney by your side can really help your butt out, can really help your case out. In the example that I keep using in this video where the bad guy approaches you, pulls a weapon on you, demands your money, and then you shot him in self-defense, that is armed robbery. And in most states, armed robbery is a crime that if committed against you, it is most states consider that reasonable for you to be in fear for your life and be able to use deadly force to defend yourself. Now, the police need what's called elements of a crime in order to charge somebody with that crime. Now, in my state, to charge somebody with armed robbery, the bad guy first has to demand something from you. So like demanding your money. The bad guy has to be armed with a weapon. And then number 3, that bad guy has to imply that he would use that weapon against you if you did not turn over your money or your valuables. And that's where a detailed statement from you, something along the lines of, hey, I was unloading the groceries into my car. This guy approached me in the grocery store parking lot. He pulled a knife on me, brandished the knife at me, and he demanded my money. And at that point, I was in fear for my life because he had that knife pulled on me. So I defended myself. So at that point, you've given the police all the elements that they need in order to charge that criminal that you shot with armed robbery. And let me tell you this, if you shoot somebody and then they later get charged with armed robbery against you, it's going to make it nearly impossible for a civil attorney to try to sue you for thousands or millions of dollars down the road. Okay, number 17, if for some reason your prosecutor or your DA did not feel like that your shooting was justified, then that is where, again, you get formally charged with murder or attempted murder or whatever it is that they charge you with. And then at that point, you and your attorney will have to make the decision if you will take a guilty plea or if you will take it to full trial. Now, if you and your attorney decide to take it to full trial, your attorney is probably going to want to have what's called expert witnesses to try to testify on your behalf. These expert witnesses have a way of conveying to juries of how these deadly force encounters go down. They have a better chance of getting a jury to understand your side of the story of what occurred. They have a better chance of getting a jury to say to themselves like, hey, I would have shot the bad guy too. Now, the issue with these expert witnesses is that they are usually very expensive, typically costing thousands and thousands of dollars before they will come and testify on your behalf to help keep your butt out of prison, which is another reason why I preach to belong to Firearms Legal Protection or some other company like that. And again, I will put a link to FLP down below. Okay, number 18, if your self-defense shooting does end up in a full trial, the county that you live in, they are not going to assign a new or inexperienced prosecuting attorney to prosecute you. They are going to send their best prosecuting attorneys to try to get a conviction against you. And this is where you need to make sure that you have a good attorney fighting for your side, because the prosecuting attorney is going to try to paint to the jury of how you are a cold-blooded murderer. And so you need an excellent attorney that's going to be explaining to that jury of how your actions were justified and within the law. Now, in a murder trial, these can get expensive. I've heard of these running up to $1 million, and that's again why I preach belonging to a company that will pay and provide you these good attorneys that will fight on your behalf throughout that whole court trial. And again, I will put a link to FLP down below, but whether you join them or not, just join one of those companies. So have you or somebody that you know ever ended up in court after they have defended themselves? And if so, what occurred and how did the court trial turn out? Comment down below so that we all can learn from each other. And if you want to see more videos like this that teach you about what happens with self-defense shootings, then click on the video that should be appearing on the screen just about now to learn what most other gun owners don't know. Anyways, folks, this is enough internet for me today. I do need to actually do some training. But folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching. And I pray that you have a good night.